Hello, and welcome to our presentation on meditation and its effect on mental state and cognitive function. I'm Max Arnerich.
I'm Grace Sam.
I'm Rachel Bannister.
And I'm Nathaniel Alvarado.
To start, what are the intentions and implications of this study? In a world saturated with sensory stimuli, being able to concentrate while learning or performing important tasks can be difficult. Our intentions are to discover whether meditation can significantly improve attention and memory, especially in learning environments during the encoding, storage, and retrieval stages of memory. Implications include discovering the best methods of how to integrate meditation either before, after, or while studying in order to increase the efficiency of learning and retention of information. Theoretical reaches, or far-reaching implications, are numerous, honestly. Meditation is highly touted as cure-all, but one of the most hot-button issues is using mindfulness and meditation to combat major depressive or anxiety-related disorders for students in stressful environments. So how do our specific goals relate to further implications? On a nightly basis, students often face the decision of doing their homework or giving in to distractions. Starting homework requires prolonged attention, patience, and energy. Giving in to the distraction of checking social media, watching a movie, or spending time with friends promises instant stimulation. Students often find themselves choosing the second option for that reason. If the goals of this study are successfully executed, results could potentially discover if a short amount of time spent meditating could allow students to have more willpower and temperance when facing a decision to study or to procrastinate. So the questions raised are, could meditation allow students to feel more focused and be less inclined to give in to the temptation of procrastination? If so, could meditation allow students to endure longer studying sessions while retaining more information? To begin our literature review, we're going to start with the topic of neuroplasticity, or the ability and capacity to reorganize and strengthen certain structures in order to improve performance and function. So there's a positive correlation between time spent meditating and cortical thickness in the left superior frontal cortex, as is shown in the graph. So the left superior frontal cortex's function is in working memory and higher cognitive functions such as synthesis of information. The graph shows a correlation coefficient of 0.31, which is relatively high.
Moving on with the literature review. When studying how meditation can affect the human brain, researchers often use brain waves, which are measured by EEGs, as a means of concrete data collection. The various waveforms reveal what cognitive state the human brain might be in at a given moment. Thus, researchers have studied which waveforms are most prevalent not only during, but also following a period of meditation. According to a 2017 study by Babroch et al., meditation stimulates the production of gamma waves, which are useful for higher cognitive function and even present during REM sleep, which is critical for memory retention. It should be noted, however, that while long-term meditators experience the most profound abundance of gamma wave production during meditation, and have even been able to willingly induce the production of gamma waves, as found in a 2004 study by Lutz et al., short-term meditators might not see such benefits at first. Long-term meditators have even demonstrated growth in the parietal cortex, which is useful for perception and attention. In addition to gamma waves, a 2013 study by Kang D.H. et al. Found that meditation also stimulates the production of theta waves, which the brain can sustain for a long period of time even after meditation is ended. When producing theta waves, the brain is better able to retrieve memories and express creativity. The same study also found that meditation induces the production of alpha waveforms, which are most notably associated with a relaxed, awake state, so no surprise there. Theoretically, therefore, meditation should put the human brain in a condition that is more geared towards better focus, better memory retention, and a better overall cognitive performance. Furthermore, in 2015, Pritpal Sidhu studied the effects of meditation on children who struggle with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Using various measures such as test of variables of attention, behavioral assessment of children, and Connor's parent rating scale, Sidhu determined that meditation significantly decreases inattention scores in children who struggle with ADHD. As our final piece of background research, we examined a 2010 study done by Zidon et al. That essentially performed a similar yet advanced form of the research method that we will be utilizing. The study looked at the effects of meditation on various groups of children and had an experimental group spend some time with a trained mindfulness meditation practitioner, whilst a control group listened to an audio recording of The Hobbit for the same amount of time. The study determined that the group who underwent the meditation sessions experienced lower levels of fatigue and confusion. Thus, the scientific data suggests that meditation can indeed aid and increase cognitive function of the brain. Long-term meditators can expect to experience the benefits of not only increased memory retention, but also increased focus, attention, and creativity.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the more specifics of the experiment. So here we have the experimental components, and we decided to do our research type randomized control experiment as opposed to the observational study, because we wanted to actually like limit, the amount of the confounding variables that we had, and it's just like have us have a little bit more evidence towards like to suggest causation, but again we would have to have more controlled factors and then have higher sample size. But we just went with the randomized controlled experiment, and participants include college students over age 18, and we just wanted specifically to have like college students given our further implications of like procrastination, and have it with people that are still in school and over the age of 18 for to eliminate the minors. And independent variables, as you know, usually denoted by X, is 10 minutes of meditation 2 times a week for 3 weeks. And this is because instead of doing just like a long amount of meditation in one given time for like maybe 1 hour for every other week, it's not as effective as a short amounts of meditation for more short periods of meditation for longer periods of time. And also that's usually how experts would say is the best way of meditating, given for even for people that are inexperienced at it. And dependent variables, usually denoted as Y, is the average change in check-in results, cognitive check-in results, and cognitive performance scores, and we'll get into more detail of that later. And average change, obviously we're going to look at each person individually on a case-by-case basis, but average change is more to like quantify the data to see how meditation really affected the participants. So we have our pre-experiment questionnaire and intro. So this is going to be held on Zoom, and this is going to be our opportunity, to introduce the experiment to both, the control and experimental groups, and then we're going to ask them questions. We're going to ask them like to like designate a stress hour, and we'll get more into detail of that later, because that's going to be where they feel stressed, unproductive, etc. And then we want and they have to be available, and we wanted to make sure like control and experimental group has never tried meditation, because we felt that this was actually going to skew the data. And basically the reason why you see the difference between 5 minutes and 15 minutes is because 15 minutes the experimental group is actually going to be doing the meditation themselves. And this is also the time just for the treatment group that we're going to introduce meditation, because it does take a certain like not too much skill, but there is like certain things you have to do, like be in a quiet environment, be able to be relaxed and not be able to fall asleep, or that's not really meditating. And also, so that's going to be also one-on-one, just to keep everything in focus. So then we have our method and research design of experiment, and this is good. We're gonna, again, like we said, we're gonna assign them to stress hour, and this is gonna be basically to eliminate other factors that can affect the results of the data. So like they do hold the experiment during a stressful hour, and not make sure that some students are meditating during happy hours and taking the test, and some students are doing it during like a more stressful hour and taking the test. That we felt was going to be a little bit skewing the data, so we wanted to make it consistent around the board for each individual, for all the participants. And here they're going to take their test, the performance test and the check-in to quantify the data. And like we said, the experimental groups are going to be the ones that are doing the meditation, and they're going to be randomly split up evenly, and then it's going to be 10 minutes of experimenting for the experimental group, and then They're still going to have that 10 minutes of time for the control group, but they're just not going to be doing anything. But they still have to take the test before and after both treatment and experimental groups. Or, I'm sorry, both control and experimental groups. Then we have our check-in and performance test. So the check-in is more of like a test to, evaluate your emotional state. It asks questions, and we made this, and it's going to be on the bottom right hand of the screen. It's going to be, how stressed are you, how happy you are, how sad you are, how excited you are, and that's going to just be more of like emotional state, and we kept it completely anonymous, and it's just like self-report, just how you personally feel. And then the cognitive performance test is a little bit different because it's designed to measure the cognitive ability. Like we're gonna give them words through recording, and it's gonna be um, testing memory and retention, and just gonna be more on the performance side as opposed to like emotional, like how you feel kind of side.
So for the final part of our experiment, we're going to give a questionnaire to both the control and experimental groups. For the control group, we're going to ask them if their cognitive state or productivity change in any way after taking the cognitive check-ins or tests. And then we're going to introduce to them the idea of meditation and ask them if they had meditated during this experiment, if they think that it could have changed their productivity levels. And finally, after the 2 weeks, if they've noticed any difference in their productivity or cognitive state from the beginning of this experiment to the end. Now for the experimental group, we're going to ask similar questions. First being if, other than meditation, if their productivity changed by any other factors. We're going to ask them if they think that meditation did affect them, why or why not. And after the 2 weeks, if they think that there was any differences in their productivity or cognitive state at the end of the experiment. So we want to ask, just like this personal questionnaire, to get personal feedback from the participants. We're going to use the cognitive test to see more like scientific, like what changes there were. But we do think it's important to get that personal feedback from the participants. So we do not have preliminary results yet, but we do expect to see the experimental group have an increase in cognitive performance. Based on the literature reviews, there was a lot of positive data showing that there should be an increase in cognitive performance in some aspects. We think it will be attentiveness and short-term memory. We expect that stress and worry levels will decrease while happiness and excitement will increase. And as for the control group, we do not expect them to have any changes in their cognitive abilities over the course of this experiment. And as always, there are limitations to our experiment. First of all is being that the sample size will not be ideal. So while it is, we are limiting it to college students over the age of 18, most of our participants will probably be UC Berkeley students, which will definitely skew the results. UC Berkeley was, I think, recently named the most stressed out school in the United States, so that could definitely affect our results. And in addition to that, most students are more stressed this semester than they normally would, given, COVID, the election, etc. And finally, for the treatment group, it could be a placebo effect in believing that meditation is supposed to help them with their cognitive ability, and if they think that it will, so if they do detect any increase in their cognitive ability, they could just attribute it to that and have that placebo effect. All right, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for watching.